Thanks very much, Matt. And it's really wonderful to see you all here. Thanks very much for being here. If Babu Chikane permits me, I'd like to deviate from the script somewhat, keep it relatively brief, but just reflect on why we think Babu Chikane is someone who exemplifies everything that we're trying to do with InkuluFreeHeid. He cut his political teeth in the youth movements in both the Black Consciousness movement and SASO, and was instrumental in the struggle against apartheid, particularly the youth struggle against apartheid. And then was instrumental in the formation of the United Democratic Movement, an incredibly complex organization that had a national footprint and that really serves as a blueprint for a lot of what InkuluFreeHeid is trying to do in the country. Apart from that, he also had, hopefully like many of you here, an incredible career, serving as cabinet secretary and DG in the presidency in what many would agree was one of South Africa's most prosperous and successful periods. But I think more than anything since then, apart from writing incredible books which give us insight into rather tricky periods in our country's history, he's also been a voice of reason recently, in a time when very few people are prepared to speak out against the injustices that are meted out against many people in South Africa on a daily basis. Babu Chikane has really been someone willing to speak out and speak truth to power when that's necessary. And I think that's the most important thing and the most respect-worthy thing about him. And it's for that reason that we're tremendously honored to have him here to speak at the launch of the InkuluFreeHeid Young Professionals Network. Thank you very much, Babu Chikane.
Afternoon. I didn't bargain that we're going to have rain, and the amount of noise that comes from outside, because my voice is not ready for that. But I'm going to try my best to do that. Now, I wish I was not given a theme to speak on, and should have been given just freedom to say what I would like to say to you. But I changed the theme and thought I must speak about passionate and innovative young people. Now, it's not outside the margins of error if you want to calculate the margins of error of the theme that I was given, and we'll be able to deal with the issues you asked me to deal with. But I want to say to you, if I speak to you from my heart, that you are a generation that's going to save us. And I will put it in the worst form of crude language I can imagine, that those of us who are products that come from the apartheid system, who were there, are damaged goods. We damaged because we think from the perspective of that experience, black and white. So I'm not talking about blacks or whites, but black and white. And your greatest task is to liberate us, to liberate yourself from us. And maybe I must put it in a different way. The adults influence their children and feed their way of thinking and create a particular generation that's formed in their image. And what we require in South Africa is young people who liberate themselves from that era and think in a new way. And I will tell you why I'm saying this, but let me deal with what I was asked to deal with. I want to start by saying this is Women's Day. Let's recognize the women and give them a big hand. Women's Month. Women's Month. Let's celebrate with them. Having said that, I would like to also say, unfortunately, the same month, we got Marikana in it. Now, it's very difficult to celebrate and mourn at the same time. And Marikana has become a reality in our lives. Unfortunately, it's like Sharpeville, and it will be with us forever. We're not going to be able to erase it, however way we could try to explain it away. Yesterday, the Commissioner of Police was told we are now going to have an inquiry about you. And I actually thought, oh, this lady is so unfortunate. Pierre, she's so unfortunate. In the first place, they appoint her, she's a social worker, they appoint her to head a police force and call it a police service if you like to. And 2 months later, she has to command an operation that she has never even thought about before. And it has nothing to do with whether she's a woman or man. Anybody who was subjected to that experience would be in the same situation. And now everybody washes their hands, and she must take responsibility for Marikana, when in fact she knew nothing about she had never gone into an operation where you plan, because you need to have managed special forces when you deal with an issue like that. I worked in an environment where I was indirectly in charge, because if you are Secretary of Cabinet, Director General in the President's office, you also chair the National Security Council. So I know what should be happening. And I know that when I see those special forces, they send shivers in me. I mean, even when we have international conferences, and I know they are around, you won't see them. But it sends shivers on me, because if anybody tried to do anything, you're dead. You know what I'm talking about? They are trained to do that. And if you give them a command, it's gone. And that problem of Marikana should never have been left with the police. It's a political problem, and the politicians should have dealt with the matter rather than leave it with the police. But the good news I want to tell you is that we formed the United Democratic Front. It was born on the 20th of August, and I actually did think it's relevant for you in terms of what you are going to be doing here. But the United Democratic Front came at a time when you couldn't say you are ANC PAC, you go to jail. People went to jail for wearing a t-shirts with green, black, gold, and was sent. There's a member of my own congregation who was sentenced for having children's t-shirts with colors without the name, just green, gold, black. And he served in the island for 2 years before the appeal succeeded, just for t-shirts, you know. Unfortunately, he died recently. But we thought we should form, at a critical moment in our history, bring all South Africans, it didn't matter where they came from, and I think it's your effort. And we built the United Democratic Front on existing professional community organizations from everywhere. They banned the organizations, so we formed community professional, nurses, lawyers, everybody formed something. And we woke up one day and said, we're forming the United Democratic Front, and overnight we had a huge organization, and its success story can be explained in this manner, that whereas they knew where I was every day, and even my prayers, when I was detained, I was interrogated on how I prayed in Vereeniging on a particular date. I mean, they even recorded your prayers, and the prayers were dangerous, and you needed to be detained for that. But we created a movement where by the time they took us to the treason trial, they had no intelligence information, because the movement was so huge that they couldn't keep track with everybody. So the bigger you became, the more safer. If you were few, you became more vulnerable. And so as an organization, I think I just want to say that it is important for you to understand the power of an organization and bringing structures together. Having said that, I want to appreciate your effort I really, and these notes were for me, not for you, but I really want to say to you, you are on the right track. You are focusing on the issues that worry me most. Now, the first is deepening our democracy. If there is anything vulnerable today, it's our democracy. And I promise that I'm going to write the next book, but next after one, there's one that needs to be done first. It's in defense of children. We've been trying to do that with my dear wife, and interviewed one woman about this story. And she is an embodiment of everything you can imagine of an abuse of a woman. Everything, from childhood up to where she is today. And we got traumatized about it ourselves. And now it's her who says to us, please publish it. I say, but this is a terrible story. And we can't do it. We'll do it, maybe give it another name. And she says, no, I want my name. I want the world to know how evil it is. You know, it's quite an experience. But the next book is going to be, after that, vulnerability of democracy. I have convinced myself, I fought for democracy, but I've discovered how vulnerable this thing is. You can buy it, you can distort it, you can do anything in the name of democracy. You can go to the party and pay people 10,000 each to vote in a particular direction. The Youth League story, I mustn't talk about the Youth League here because it's a party story. But that conference that was cancelled, somebody had paid money, but they cancelled the election. Now he wants his money back. The election didn't happen, but if you give poor people, they chow the money. I mean, within a day, you won't find it again tomorrow. So democracy can be bought, and it gets done at the highest level. And democracy is the most vulnerable. One president of a country I won't mention, and I refer it in my books, is that we agreed the way in which we're going to vote in the UN on a particular matter as Africans. There are 4 seats, 5, is it 3 votes? Yeah, 3 votes. We're going to vote in a particular way. One didn't vote in that way. So, of course, the president calls him, and they call them each other brothers, you know. What happened? Says, President, I got a call at 12 o'clock in the night from President so-and-so of this huge country, who said, if you voted that way, you're going to lose your budget. Now, most of these African countries have got 60%, 70% foreign funding for their national budget. So if a country calls you and says, if you vote in that way, your budget is gone, you won't even pay for the army. And he said, I voted the way they wanted me to vote, and against the interests of my people. And that, to me, is terrorism at its highest level. And this country that calls at 12 is known as the best democracy in the world. You know what I'm talking about? And for me, that's terrorism at its best. It's not the terrorism you are talking about. Heads of states are being terrorized to comply with the interests of the powerful against their own people. And that's where democracy is vulnerable. And as you see today, you've got a big challenge in the country. And I don't want to speak about that because I'm a disciplined cadre of the movement. I'm following the procedures to deal with this crisis. It's a big crisis. When you reach a stage where people break the laws because they believe that it is permissible. And I mustn't talk about Nkandla because I'll get into trouble. But the point is, people did what they did in Nkandla because they believed it's permissible to do so. They knew they were breaking the law. The officials know exactly what the law. I was there. I know how the system works. And in my book, you will know, when they came and said, the leaders say the following, I said to them, which leaders are you talking about? No, the leaders met. Give me a minute for the meeting of those leaders. There will be no minute for it. And you must change the minutes of cabinet. I'm secretary of cabinet. Oops, change minutes of cabinet? Yeah, but you are a majority. It's 2 weeks. You can go and change rescind your decision. Why do you want me to change the minutes? No, the leaders say so. I said, well, I would rather lose my job. I will not change the minutes. Now, if you are an official, you become a victim because you change the minutes. Who goes to jail is the official. So I'm going to write an article about the officials when Nkandla is over. It's the officials, you get a plain landed Waterkloof is the officials. You know what I'm talking about? It's the official. Who signs the books is the official, it's not the minister. And I want the officials to learn a lesson. The law says if they ask you to do an irregular thing, ask them to put it in writing. And then all the DGs who put it in writing lost their jobs. So you lose your job, so prepare yourself to lose the job. So for me, democracy is vulnerable. It needs protection. You need to have a system. And if you don't get young people to do that, you won't survive. Social cohesion, I came late today, but you were late, so you didn't realize I'm late. But I was dealing with Roodepoort. We've been there, Roodepoort Primary School. We have to find a solution. We have been asked to find a solution for Roodepoort. But this is about social cohesion, change, and unmanaged change and dynamics that I don't have time to talk about. We need to find innovative solutions, and that's what I want to talk about. I want you to join the club of finding innovative solutions. Now, for your generation, I thought Frantz Fanon is the best for your generation. Each generation must, because you can't be like June 16 or be like us who are crazy, throwing stones and etc. You can't do that. But each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, which means you have to say, what is my mission, this generation? And you either fulfill it or betray it. So it's a question of whether you are a spectator and the mess happens and you do nothing about it in relative opacity. Now, I just want to say there were various generations. I always appreciate Prixley Kaisaka Seme. The iconic 1906 speech. When I did some research about African Renaissance, I discovered that Seme had referred in the regeneration of Africa, used the expression, I'm an African. So after I saw that, I went to Mbeki and said, no, Chief, were you influenced by Kaseme? He stopped and said, no. I said, well, Chief, you've forgotten, because you must have read about it. It influenced your thinking, even if you don't remember, but it must have influenced you. By the way, one of the seminal speeches that was ever made, it's I'm an African. It was made between 2 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock that morning. Because they discovered they had to do an extra speech. They had not known that. So he said, we left him at about 1, started about 2, 7 o'clock, it was in our computers. I'm an African. So it wasn't even prepared. But that generation of Prixley thought about Africa, what needs to happen. It's quite amazing. When you go there, we think we know too much. They had thought about it long time ago. The Mandela and Sisulu generation, youth and troublesome young people who made their mark. And I want to declare, because I went to my son's book fair stuff where they talked about, did Mandela sell out or something like that. And I said, if they gave me a chance, I would say, please leave Mandela alone. Mandela played his part. You can't blame him for failing to do more than he has done. You get what I'm talking about? He did his part. He may have made mistakes. That's his generation. But we must do what we need to do during our generation. The June 16 lot was very brave, and I was there. I lived in Soweto. And the only thing I did that night was to walk to the clinic because you couldn't drive. They don't know who's in the car. It's in the night. I walked to the clinic just to go and make sure the women who were in maternity ward are safe. And when I arrived there were young people at the gate. And I said, I'm just coming to check whether the women in this clinic are okay. They said, go and sleep. We are taking care of them. You can see they were a disciplined lot. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's their generation. And if June 16 did not happen, we may not have been free as fast as we did. Though that generation made a difference. It changed even the liberation movement, the way they were thinking when they arrived there. I think my generation was unfortunate because it straddled over all those generations. And I just want to say, I looked at this pitch battles and I discovered it's not good English. I want to say it in Sesotho and English can't help me to say it. but we were the generation that has to be at the end of the war when it was so intense. And paid a price, big price for it, to defeat apartheid and begin to build a new society. So I participated in that process. Your generation, for me, must be an innovative generation to find solutions to the most challenging issues we are facing today. And I want a liberated generation. You can't ask me about the past. Those who read Africa's newspapers will know the BL did a headline on me this week, and Rapport might report tomorrow, because we're talking about the Kairos document, which is religious. The English media doesn't think religious things are important. But I said, the biggest risk, if there's a threat to this country, is the toxic youth bulge. Now, youth bulge is an advantage in a normal society because you've got young people who can grow the economy, be skilled and etc. In Europe, they've got an old elders bulge, and so to respect them, it's old people, more old people than young people, and it's putting pressure on the economy. But if you have a youth bulge where there are no opportunities, not properly skilled, unemployed, no hope, nothing to live for, it is a bomb just they're ready to be detonated, because they will destroy everything else we privileged lot have. Now, that was like a frightening thing when I said it. Now, I've discussed with business people, I've gone to Kutefani and others, Anglo-American, and I'm saying to them, unless we find a solution, don't ask me who caused the trouble, it's irrelevant, but the trouble is with us. And as long as if these young people have nothing to live for, the most dangerous person is a person who has nothing to live for. And then, of course, this Somali gets robbed in the west of Soweto, pulls a gun and shoots this person who's stealing in the shop. And then the whole, where did these young people come from to attack foreigners in Soweto? During the day, not in the evening, not in the night. Which means there are lots of young people there who are doing absolutely nothing, who are ready to do anything. And that's what it actually means to me. In the past, we used to have street committees, communication. We had our own way. We could cause a revolution overnight. No SMSs and all this Twitter and Facebook, and there was nothing. Actually, by the way, there was no cell phone during our times. It might interest you to know that we lost Madiba the day he got released. For 20 minutes. We didn't know as leaders where he was. And it was the scariest moment in my life. Because we arrived in Cape Town, the crowds built up on the bridges. I thought the bridges will collapse on us as we drove from the prison to Cape Town. And when we arrived, the security, makeshift security we had for ourselves, because we said the government can't provide security, we'll provide it. And we had our own. Remember, there was no ANC, nothing. It was us in the country. So we had our drivers, security. They saw the danger. They drove away from the crowd because they felt Madiba would be crushed. Indeed, he could have been crushed because Jesse Jackson came with an armored vehicle, and the armored vehicle was crushed by the masses thinking there's Madiba inside there. So these wise young people who drove Madiba deviated, went to Dala Oma's house, and camped there for 20 minutes. And we as leaders didn't know, there was no communication system. And for 20 minutes, we didn't know where Madiba was. It was the most frightening thing ever in my life. Because there were no cell phones, so you must have a landline to communicate. So they had to get somebody else to come to the hall and tell us he's safe in a house. Just tell us when to bring him. And we told them when to bring him, and he came. We smuggled him into the hall. Now, that's all days. You are advantaged, communication, everything. You have got the possibility of getting the education you get, except those children in Soweto. I mean, yesterday, we were dealing with these kids from Rodiport are taken to this Lefirong school in Soweto. And then they say the facilities are not good, they are blushing block and etc. So I say, if that's the case, which means the children who were in that school have been living under those conditions. You know what I'm talking about? There are still children disadvantaged even up to today. And for me, that's the greatest challenge. So I would like to say to you, we need informed, learned, passionate change makers, to use your language. Change makers who will make the world better than the place where we are. And you have to start dealing, even if you are non-party, partisan group, you are political. You cannot be political. You know, you can be not partisan, but you are political, because the problems are political. There are issues of policy we need to deal with, socioeconomic problems, science and technology, etc. I want to just say to you, before I tell you this story, the last story, then we can talk. Just say to you, South Africa is a fantastic place. I mean, this country is extraordinary. And I pronounced that word extraordinary, and they said, hey, it's not pronounced that way. I said, well, I'll do it in Sipulana if you challenge me. Extraordinary South Africa. Those who have traveled know that there's no country like this one. Those who haven't traveled don't know. And for black young people who have not traveled, I always say, let's have a special trip, put them in a plane, take them to one of the countries. When they come back, they'll love their country, even if they are still living in pain. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, this country is extraordinary. It is for us to make it work. That's all we need to do, and that everybody will have something to live for. Now, I want to say to you, the challenge I want to put to you is, don't spend time like this journalist who talked to me after the BL article, wants to know who's responsible for it. Has government failed? I said, no, leave government out of this thing. Government won't solve the economic problem. Hear me. A government cannot solve the economic problem, can only define policies and use taxpayers' money. If you say they must use taxpayers' money to solve this big economic problem, forget about it. It's not going to happen. We have got millions of people who are excluded from the economy. Now, when I said that, they said, no, you're still talking apartheid. It's 21 years later. I said, well, I'm still here. 21 years later. Let me tell you the story of my sons, and you know the other one. So I've got 3 sons. One is the apartheid one, the other one is in the middle. The other one is the new arrival. And the middle one used to be a mediator between the two. They fight lots because Obakeng, whose youth league now is leading a youth league in Soweto, would say there needs to be empowerment and this and the other. He was still young, not now. He is still young. He used to say, no, I don't need empowerment. I beat the white kids in class, so what's the problem? Because he was with them in class. So what's the problem? I don't need empowerment. I'm okay. And the older one said to him, Dad, wait until he goes to UCT. He didn't know he will go to UCT. Until he goes there, finishes. When he finishes, that's when he will discover he's got a problem. And I said, why? And Obakeng said, because Obakeng also went to Secretariat. When he comes out, if you're white, you have an uncle, a father who has left you some inheritance, an uncle who has a business, you know what I'm talking about. And you've lived in a business environment, you've got possibilities, the jobs become available because you have the right contacts, etc. When he leaves there, he'll discover his father doesn't have money. And their uncles and brothers are subsidized by his father. And up to now, I'm still subsidizing my younger sisters and brother there, etc., and so forth. He will not have capital, even if he has a brain, but he will not have capital. And I tested it, and I said, well, I've got a brain. I've just left government. I must negotiate with Standard Bank. I'm a priority client to give me a loan. I've got a deal. And then I discovered there's something called 3 times cover. Those who are in the finance area know what I'm talking about. So I say, no, I need 4 million. And they say, no, 3 times cover, you know. And I couldn't do the deal. I don't have the money, you know. And so we have a bigger problem people can imagine, and people have not thought about it properly. And so I have said, let's work with the younger people. And I'm chair of Kagiso Trust, and I'll just tell the story and we can talk. I'm chair of Kagiso Trust. I see you've just come in, say you know the story about Kagiso Trust. I said, let's develop a model and talk to big business. Develop a model that will assist these black young people to be included in the economy. I'm using the word include because they will murder me. They say we don't want to be included, we want to own it. So I have to be careful with the words as well. Included in the economy. In any way, the economy will do better if we include all of them. You know what I'm talking about? Because they will contribute. So let's do something extraordinary. And we are developing this model because we want to create, you can't wait for government. You won't wait for business to do it voluntarily. They won't do it voluntarily. Those who don't have capital will remain without capital for many years to come. And the development entities, these institutions, financial institutions, which are meant to help blacks, they're not doing it. It's not working. The policy is there, but it's not working. So you need something else. And so we can, because Kagiso Trust has saved itself after 93, 94, we have developed capital, and we're challenging big business to say, we want you to meet us rent to rent. You can imagine an NGO challenging Anglo-American rent to rent. So we want to find a solution. And I'm not talking to government yet. Forget about government. We as South Africans must think. And we must go to government when we have thought and said, we've got a solution. And we think you need to do the following. You get what I'm talking about, rather than complain. And then we've started a program in Soweto to deal with basic needs of people, poverty. I don't have time about that. We have modeled it. And I am convinced that nobody in South Africa should sleep without food. There are three things: clothes, food, cover over their heads. Three things. I'm not talking millionaires. I like Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. She said, my job is to produce thousandaires. I'm not here to produce millionaires. Thousandaires means people who have food on the table. That's the basic thing that we need to do for young people in this country. Unless somebody produces that solution. Let me warn you, I worked with comrades in government. They come being enthusiastic. They realize this thing is too big. They then realize I might be out in 5 years' time, and then they get corrupted. You don't need rocket science to understand that. They go thinking they can do it. You see, if you go knowing you can't do it, it's not a problem. But if you go thinking you can do it, it crushes you. And then you know, they might take me out. I might not be put in this position next 5 years. Where will I be? And they get corrupted. And I don't want to talk about that because it's a different subject. I only want to say to you, I'm looking for a team, a winning team, a dream team. I said this 2 years ago in Neisner. Somebody reminded me 3 months ago to say, you talked about a dream team. Where is the dream team? I'm looking for people who are thinkers, and I think your group, with a network of the professionals you have, can put its mind and think out of the box as to how we solve the problem we are facing. I would like to leave it at that, because I think that's what, for me, is the challenge. Thank you.